Okay, I just want to show this feature real quick called Spotlight. Spotlight lets you add textures to a model rather easily by letting you manipulate the textures in different ways. You can use this Spotlight tool to rotate textures and scale textures and do all sorts of things rather quickly. So first I'm going to have a model here that I want to apply Spotlight to. So I'm just going to select a 3D cube, drag it out, hit T for edit, and make it a polymesh 3D. Right now you can see the resolution is low, so I'm going to raise that up by going into geometry and clicking on Dynamesh and raising that Dynamesh resolution up a little bit. Here it is at 384. Click Dynamesh, and now hitting Shift F, you can see I got tiny polygons, so it's a decent resolution for me to apply some textures to. So the way this works is you go into the texture menu and you can import some textures. So that's what I'm going to do. I prepared a bunch of textures already. So I have these textures set up here, basically a bunch of parts. And you want to use JPEGs or TIFFs for this. PNG files won't work. These parts here I prepared in Illustrator on separate artboards. So they're just quick vectors, but I did it quickly, and that's the key, just working really fast. I exported these out of Illustrator using asset export, and that allowed me to select all the artboards basically and export all the artboards all at once. So it was really quick. And now I'm going to bring in a couple of these, and you can bring in several textures simultaneously when you import them into Zbrush. So I'm going to do that. And now I have some textures here that I created myself. And I'm going to click on the first one that I want to add the spotlight. To add the spotlight, it's basically these four icons underneath the texture thumbnails. And to add them to the spotlight feature, just click this plus and minus icon here. What happens is it opens up Lightbox because this will let you add more textures if you want, but I don't need to use Lightbox, so I'm going to use the comma key, which is the shortcut to close that Lightbox window. And now you see my texture. And what I have here with Spotlight, and what Spotlight is this ring. This is the Spotlight tool. So the ring has icons going around it. The icons let you do different things. To place my texture anywhere I want, I can just select that texture and move it around. And then to use these rings, I can, for instance, scale. So this is scaling, and rotating the ring clockwise or counterclockwise will let me scale that. And then I can place it into position. So what I'm going to do is basically paint onto this object using Spotlight, and then I will take that painting, and that would be called a poly paint texture in ZBrush terms, and convert it to a mask, and then use the mask to extract it, the part as a piece. So first off, Spotlight uses a couple shortcuts. Z is the keyboard shortcut that lets you turn the ring on and off. But if I click Z to turn it off, technically Spotlight is still there. It didn't go away. And Shift Z will make it go away completely. So if I hit Shift Z, then it goes away completely. You see when I click Z, the ring goes away, but the texture is still there. Well, that's key because it's letting me see what I'm doing as I'm painting. And you'll see that in a second. So next step is you notice that the texture here is it's a little transparent in the middle, where it was a black texture or black shape created in Illustrator in that JPEG. Well, initially Spotlight recognizes black as transparent, so we're going to have to adjust that. And the way to adjust it is pretty easy. So there is a icon on here that will let me change the contrast. So I can click that. What happens is you'll see a little orange bar on top there. That means it's activated. And now I can rotate around, and just rotating a little bit to the right, that's counterclockwise. It added contrast. It made that transparent area black, so I'm going to do that. And now I'm ready to go, because if it's transparent, I'm not going to be able to paint anything. Same with white. White is seen as being as not transparent, but it's not being seen as any color at all. So I wouldn't be able to paint white on there if I wanted to. So the next part of this is to turn off that ring. But I want to show you the function that makes the tool what it is. The name is derived from this. There's a little icon, looks like a spotlight. If I change that, it's going to give me this radius, and you'll see it when I turn off the ring. And this basically hides some of the texture, but not all of it. So now I can see the surface as I'm working on this model. So I'm going to go back up here, click on that ring, highlight it orange, rotate it a little bit. And now I hit Z, and you see that? That's the spotlight. That's why we call it spotlight. So first I'm going to start to just sculpt on the model. So what this texture is doing initially is just acting as like a stencil to create some sort of relief using the standard brush that I have selected right now. I'm not painting on it just yet. I'm actually sculpting on it using that texture to help me sculpt. And that's because Z-Add is turned on. So what I want to do is actually paint. So I'm going to undo a couple times. Instead of Z-Add, I'm going to hit RGB, and that will let me paint. But first, before I can paint anything on this cube, I have to make sure that it's filled with a color, because otherwise it won't let me paint anything. So I'm going to go into color. I'm going to do a fill object here, and now I'm ready to paint. So now when I paint, and one thing I have to make sure, is this a high enough resolution? No, I have to go back and Dynamesh. I might have undid the Dynamesh. So I'm going to add some resolution. So it has to be a high resolution. You see what I was doing before when I was painting. I wasn't getting the texture. Now let me go back in the spotlight, and that's a high resolution. And now as I paint, I'm painting that texture directly on that cube. I could probably boost the resolution up even more. You see some anti-aliasing there, some stair stepping, but that's okay for now. It just kind of shows you what I want to do. We can use polish in the deformation menu to clean up any stair stepping, and I'll show you what I mean in a couple seconds. So that looks good. So I'm going to get rid of spotlight completely by hitting Shift-Z, and now I'm just back into the normal sculpting mode of ZBrush. What I want to do with this now is I want to take this painting and I want to turn it into a mask. If I go into subtools, I can turn this painting on and off, this poly painting on the cube, by clicking on the little paintbrush in the subtools, so it goes away. That basically makes my hides my poly paint. But first, I want to take this poly paint, this black, and turn it into a mask. So now I can go down to masking and click on mask by intensity, which is in mask. In this, you click on mask by color first, and you'll see a mask by intensity button. So darker colors are going to create a darker mask. I'm going to click on that, so it can transfer that poly painting mask or poly painting into a mask. You can't see it yet because you have to turn off the poly painting, like I just showed you in the subtool menu by clicking on the paintbrush. So I'm going to click on that paintbrush icon, and there you go. So now I have a mask on my cube, and that was derived from that poly painting that we used Spotlight to create. So basically, the reason why I want to do this is to quickly create geometry, and I'm going to use Extract to do this. So I'm going to increase the thickness. Extract is in the subtool menu. It's in the subtool menu. So I'm going to click Extract, and I got a little piece of geometry now. Next thing I want to do is smooth it out. So I'm going to increase the smoothness. Do that again. Maybe it's a little bit too smooth. Increase the thickness. So you can keep on playing with these extract values. Here. If my resolution on the cube was a little bit higher with Dynamesh, my extraction and my mask would be a little bit more sharper. But we're going to fix that by using some polishing. So this extraction looks good. I'm going to hit the extract button to finalize it. or hit accept to finalize it under extract. And then I'm going to go back to my subtool menu and just isolate this by turning off the original cube. And now you see my part created basically by using Spotlight. The mask itself is still applied to the part, so I'm going to control and just click and drag to get rid of the mask. If I hit Shift F, you can see the mask. You can see the part we created with that extract has two polygroups. And there's also another feature that's included, which is this line that goes around the edges. So the extraction actually created a crease on that part that was just created, which is helpful because now I'm going to go into deformation and click on polish crisp edges. And I'm also going to click on this little dot here. So that's going to give me a nicer polish. And I'm going to drag that over. And then I'm going to hit Shift F. And now I have a nice sharp edge on this piece. So that's just a quick way of using Spotlight to create something like this. So what I would do is just go ahead and create more parts and pieces for what I want to do. So I'm going to click on the cube and the subtool again. Let's turn off the visibility of that new part. Let's get rid of the mask by control dragging. I'm going to raise the resolution up of Dynamesh as well. So I'm going to turn off Dynamesh, raise that resolution. Let's raise it up to like 400. Click Dynamesh. Let me raise it up even more. Let's see. I got to make sure it's doing what I want first. So it's not re-Dynameshing like I wanted to. But anyways, sometimes Dynamesh, I don't know why it doesn't re-Dynamesh like I want it to. So I will go into Z Remesher, apply Z Remesher to that cube. So it takes a couple seconds. So I'm just reducing the resolution here of the cube. Now I'm going to go back into Dynamesh and click that again, and now I can see that the resolution is much higher. Now I'm going to go into Spotlight, so I'm going to add a new texture. So let's say I'm going to add this texture. Click the plus and minus, get rid of Lightbox, drag that new texture over onto the cube, increase the contrast here by clicking on the icon, so now I know it's black, it's not transparent. RGB is still turned on, so I know I can paint on this, so I am going to just go ahead and paint on that cube. Now you can see that resolution of the cube is much higher, so that looks a lot better. I don't get the little the stair stepping. Now that it's painted on the cube, I'm going to turn off Spotlight completely by hitting Shift Z. I'm going to go back into masking. I'm going to click on mask by intensity. So this time I won't turn off the poly painting visibility. I'll just keep it there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and extract the piece. So I'm going to go to Subtool, go down below, hit Extract. And that piece, those edges are much cleaner this time. So I'm going to say, yeah, that's great. I'm going to accept it. Go into the layer with that piece here, that subtool layer, turn off the masking on the piece itself, and then go down into deformation, polish crisp edges like I did before. You can keep on raising that up, and there I have a nice piece that follows the edges a little bit better. One of the things you could do is go into your trim brushes, so you can trim some of these edges using like trim curve if you want to add some sharper edges here. So if you want to adjust those parts and pieces, you can do that using a trim brush. So I have some sharper edges, so that's up to you. And then I have a nice part that I can play with for whatever I'm modeling. So I'm creating random parts here for random mechanical doodads. So you can go into ray mesh, let's say, and start playing with different arrays on this. So just do whatever you need to do to start adjusting this model. So I'm just giving it some offsets here. So the part itself, is really quick to create, and I can do all sorts of stuff. I can turn it into an insert mesh. I can add more features onto this piece itself. All sorts of different things just to add to it. But the fact is that it was just really, really fast for me to do this, which is the advantage of using Spotlight to create the piece to begin with. So that's pretty much all I want to show you for this. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Thank you.